Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I want to talk about the 2026 Alaska U.S. Senate primary, which just took place last Tuesday. And it was a very important race and showed some interesting numbers for the 2026 general election in the state of Alaska that could point to maybe whether the Democrats or Republicans are currently favored in this very close race. So let's look at the results here. Mary Peltola, the Democrat, former Congresswoman, now the leading Democrat candidate in the race, ended up finishing in first place at 48.09% of the vote, overall getting 63,891 total votes. The incumbent U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan finished in second place at 42.72% of the vote, getting 56,756 votes. So right there alone, you're looking about a 5 to a 6 point lead for Peltola over Sullivan just based on those numbers. Now, Daniel J. Sullivan, the other Sullivan in the race, who many are seeing as a potential spoiler to take votes away from Dan Sullivan, currently gets 2.44% of the vote, which if that is exactly what it is supposed to be, where that Sullivan's taking votes away from Sullivan, well, even if you were to give his votes to the incumbent U.S. Senator, he would still be shy of 60,000 votes or so, and Peltola would still be leading probably by around 3% on the initial primary ballot across this race. So their top four candidates advancing, the three candidates, Peltola, Sullivan, and the other Sullivan, are now decided. Fourth place is still too close to call between David Leslie, a Democrat, and Gerald Hikes, a Republican. Currently, there's only a difference of like 20 votes separating them right now, so very, very close until we know for sure how that's going to go. But obviously here, when you look at the map, the big takeaway here is Mary Peltola gets a very significant, just almost close to near 50% of the vote at 48.09 and getting 63,891 votes. Now, this is a very significant amount here. Obviously, we're going to go to the general election. General election will probably be different than the primary, but she starts out very strong, getting 48.09%. And again, you have to remember the history of Mary Peltola as a congresswoman if you're unfamiliar. She wins the special election in 2022 and then runs for the full election in November, and she defeats Sarah Palin by 9.9% in the 2022 election. She then runs for re-election in 2024, and she narrowly loses to Republican Nick Begich by 2 points, but again, that was in 2024, and she did lose in ranked choice voting in an election that Republicans did very well. Now she's running in a 2026 midterm where the Democrats are poised to do very well, and she still only lost by under 3 points in 2024. So the Democrats are obviously very optimistic about this race. Her primary showing, I mean, I don't really know what other conclusion to take away from this other than Peltola put up a very strong performance, finishing in first place, already getting about 48.1%. The incumbent U.S. Senator, with someone who literally almost has the same name and is trying to draw votes away from him, still combined falls under 46% of the vote. So Peltola, either way, starts out above Sullivan to start out, which I think would be a worrying sign for Republicans to view in that race. In terms of the general election, again, for the general, we know that Sullivan, Peltola, and the other Sullivan are facing off here. In terms of some of the forecasts, what we have from Decision Desk HQ, they currently have the win probability 57-43 in the advantage of Mary Peltola, including a projected vote share margin of 51-49, meaning ranked choice voting, of course, would be needed to settle this. But Peltola is now favored on their website to win the Senate race, including a potential flip in the toss-up category. Now, they do still have it as toss-up, so it is possible for both Sullivan and Peltola to win, but they do have a projected margin of Democrat +2 in this race, which I would say is definitely very significant here. Now, in the election simulator website that I like to use, I just kind of drew out the primary really quickly of what Peltola at 48%, Sullivan at 42%. I couldn't get the scales to exactly slide right between Daniel Sullivan, Grayson, David Leslie. It kind of just got a little finicky every time I tried it, but Peltola essentially gets 48% of the vote, Sullivan 42% across the state here. And you see a lot of areas of the state of Alaska coming in blue, including very big important areas like Anchorage and its borough. Peltola wins here about 54.6 to 35.6. Fairbanks goes Peltola by like 20 votes, like a very close result. But a lot of these areas in Alaska, even though they're not super large in population on this part of the state and the central part of the state, still comes in heavily for Mary Peltola. And then as you get toward like Fairbanks and Anchorage and going east here, these counties come in. A few come in for Sullivan, a few for Peltola, but a lot of them come in very handily for Mary Peltola, including into the capital of Juneau as well, which comes in for Peltola. And this is, I think, obviously not the exact map because we don't know what the exact map will look like because I don't think they released that information in Alaska. But could be what a possible map could look like in Alaska for the U.S. Senate race if it were to play out this way, 58 to 42. Now, in this one, we also have a simulation of the general election. Again, I couldn't get the two candidates to play itself out, where like I tried adding the candidate names in Sullivan and in Grayson, but it never really didn't really allow it here. So I'm just going to click simulate the results. We'll see how it comes out. Then we're going to use the adjust setting to kind of go from there. On the adjust setting, they have Peltola winning 52.9%, Sullivan 45.7%, Darden 0.7%, Grayson 0.6%. No, I don't believe ranked choice voting was used necessarily on this one, but we can even probably adjust this now. We can put Darden down to 0. We can put Grayson down to 0. There we go. Okay. Darden down 0.2. Okay, so this is Peltola at 53. And Sullivan's at about 46.1 here. We can even adjust to that Decision Desk HQ margin of, say, 51 to about 49 or so. We'll say 51.42 would go up a little bit more for Sullivan. Here we go. About 50.7 to 48.8. We're trying to get Darden and Grayson down to 0. Again, it's a little fighting it a little bit. We'll just leave it here. And this is what the map would look like of what it could look like in the general election, where you see, again, Fairbanks goes narrowly red for Sullivan by about a little bit under 3 points, about 2.4%, but you're looking at roughly 277,000 or so votes, nearly 278,000 votes. In the primary, there was 132,000, so a little bit under half of what the expected general election vote could look like in the state of Alaska, but Peltola already getting about 64,000 votes is pretty significant considering she's predicted based on the percentages of Decision Desk HQ getting about 51%. She'd be at about 141,000 votes or so. So if all those votes turn out for her again, she's already close to nearly getting half of those votes. And in a general election, that's what it look like. You see Anchorage coming blue as well, 57.9, 42.1. Sullivan getting 48.8. It's going to be super close, but you see the areas that Sullivan wins. Again, narrowly in Fairbanks. He does well in southwest or southeast Fairbanks as well in Matanuska, Susquehanna Borough as well. Sullivan does well in Kenai Peninsula. Up here in Juneau or down here in Juneau, Peltola does strongly here. This is what a super close race in Alaska map-wise could look like. Overall vote totals, again, they forecast about 278,000 votes. You're only looking at a difference here of like 141,000 to 135,000. You're looking at a margin of probably like under 5,000 votes and a 2-point race between Peltola versus Sullivan if it played out this way. So based on what we've seen so far, at very least, we know it's going to be a very close race. I think this is more of an encouraging sign for Mary Peltola than Dan Sullivan, to be honest. But I think we're in for a very close race in the Alaska Senate race. And I think it looks something like this to start out right now. Definitely going to be interesting to see how it tracks over the months to come. But I just want to show what that would look like. In terms of the polling we have for this race right now between Dan Sullivan and Mary Peltola, the polling, the averages currently have Peltola up about 1.1% from Race to the White House, Real Clear Politics, and Nate Silver's Bulletin. They have Peltola at 48.2, Sullivan at 47.1, but still 4.7% undecided. Alaska utilizes ranked choice voting, so the winning candidate will break 50% of the vote. A new poll came out from the beginning of August from Alaska Survey Research. They have Peltola at 51, Sullivan at 49. So again, another very close race, 2-point margin of victory in that one. The Democratic Data for Progress pollster showed Peltola getting 53, Sullivan 47, and the New York Times poll before that in June showed Sullivan up 47 to 45, but still 5% of the vote undecided there. In terms of some of the other rankings here, I do believe I have the Vote Hub map up where they currently have it listed at Peltola plus 0.5. She's favored to win, 0.5% margin of victory or so, 0.6%. In terms of the probability, I mean, it's pretty essentially close to even as you can get. Peltola's at 53.4, Sullivan's at 46.6, so very much as close to a 50-50 race as you can really get here. 4, we'll look at Race to the White House, where they currently have the Alaska Senate race as well here. They have it listed in the toss-up category. They have Sullivan up by 0.2%, 51.1 to 48.9 here. And we can even go to the individual state and see how they break it down and their fundamentals here. For the state partisan lean in Alaska, they had it Republican plus 1.3. Experience winning, they give the nod to the Republican Sullivan by 1.3 as well. The last election, the incumbent gets a 0.4% advantage. For fundraising, Peltola gets 0.7 there. Head-to-head polling gives Peltola plus 1. Factor in national environment gives Peltola another 1.1. And that all averages out to a very, very close Republican plus 0.2. So this race is certainly one of the closest we're going to see in the country in 2026 based on how these numbers are shaping up right now. It is interesting that their chance to win each race as well on Race to the White House is now the lowest it's been for Sullivan in quite a long time. Back on June 30th, it was 54.5. He's now down to 51.1. So definitely moving in a very, very close direction here. We'll also take a look at the PollsMax website as well and see their forecast for Alaska. They currently have Sullivan up by 1.6% over Mary Peltola. So again, another very, very close margin from them as well. They have Sullivan with the largest lead on here, but still very close result. Anchorage going about 12.8% for Peltola in that one. Look here in Juneau, 37 points or so for Peltola in that. That's where they have it laid out there. Again, for the election simulator, it could look something like this in a Peltola 2-point win, but we'll have to wait and see, obviously, how it all ends up. In terms of the importance of the Alaska Senate race, I'm just going to finish here as we talk about it. The 2026 Senate map is very competitive, and there's a lot of opportunities for the Democrats to potentially win back the Senate from the Republicans. Republicans hold a majority of 53 to 47 right now. On the absolute bare bones toss-up map I have, Democrats are at 44, Republicans are at 46. And as you start assigning states from there, Georgia goes in likely Democrat, North Carolina as well, and New Hampshire as well. That would get Democrats up to 47, including flipping North Carolina. Though there could be some polling where it may fall under 5 points in the next few months or so. But again, we'll have to wait and see if that actually plays out. But that is a possibility. But either way, Democrats seem to be favored there. That gets the Democrats up to 47. From there, Democrats, if they win the state of Maine and defeat Susan Collins, that gets them up to 48. If they hold Michigan, Abdul Al-Sayed versus Mike Rogers, that would get the Democrats to 49. So then the Democrats just need to win 2 more Senate seats to flip the U.S. Senate. If Mary Peltola wins her Alaska Senate race, at the bare minimum, the Democrats are at 50-50. And even though the Republicans would still hold a tie-break majority in the U.S. Senate, that puts them on the doorstep of flipping the Senate in 2028 if they can do that. If they can pick up one more Senate race, for instance, maybe Sherrod Brown can pull off a narrow victory in Ohio. If he can do that, Democrats win the Senate, getting 51 Senate seats without giving Iowa or Nebraska or Texas to either the Democrats or Republicans yet. I think the Republicans are currently favored in all 3 of them very narrowly right now. Certainly very confident Republicans are favored in Nebraska. I'm less so, but still pretty confident Republicans are favored in Iowa. And I'm definitely the least confident that Republicans are favored in Texas with Ken Paxton versus James Talarico. It's possible Talarico may be the first Democrat to win Texas in a very long time. If that were to happen, that would get the Democrats up to 52 Senate seats. Republicans, if they win that, though, it would still be Democrats at 51, Republicans 49. And the Democrats are taking what looked to be a very, very tough Democratic election map in terms of it would have to win Republican states that Trump won by more than 10 points in Alaska, in Texas, in Nebraska, Iowa, Ohio, and win these places. And Democrats could theoretically get 51 Senate seats by winning Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Maine, Ohio, New Hampshire, Alaska, and are definitely within striking distance in Texas, Iowa, and Nebraska. So in terms of Alaska and what these results show, it's a very important role because if the Democrats want to win the Senate in 2026, Alaska could play a very, very important role to getting to that 51 Senate seat majority. And even if by some way Republicans maybe hold on to, say, Michigan and the Democrats don't take the Senate, well, Alaska still plays a massive role at getting the Democrats to 50 Senate seats, where if one Republican U.S. Senator dissents, for instance, fellow Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski, if she decides she doesn't want to vote for the Republican-backed bill, while Peltola, being the other Democratic senator, getting it to 50 plays a very massive role in that as well. So Alaska's Senate race is super important for 2026, and if Peltola narrowly leads it, it's going to be very big for the Democrats and their chances in 2026. So these results, Peltola finishing at around 48% of the vote, Sullivan down at 42.72. We always talk about the primaries, how important of a role and the indicator do they play in the general election. Obviously, we're not going to know until the general election plays out, but Democratic enthusiasm has been very high in a lot of primaries across the country, and so far, Alaska seems to be another situation of that. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out in the general, but I would say these are pretty encouraging numbers for Mary Peltola. For now, we'll have to wait and see if it translates in November. But if I'm the Democrats, I would probably take this as more of a good night than the Republicans, without much of a doubt there. But I'm interested to hear what you think. Leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. What you think about this race and the primary results, leave all that down there. For now, though, that is it. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to hit like and subscribe so you get notified when I post a new video, which I do every single day. And I hope to see you in a future video.